Welcome to Sharing Hope. I'm your host, Jamie George, and our guest today is Mr. Stu G. Stu G is a guitarist, songwriter, producer, author. He's best known as a guitarist for the British band Delirious, who for nearly 2 decades penned many of the best-known worship songs in modern times. He's on tour usually with Michael W. Smith, our good friend. And of course, who knows when the next tour is at this point. But
that's right.
The good news is this man stays busy in Nashville all the time. He is one of Nashville's elite and premier guitar players. He's just phenomenal. And he's been writing like crazy. He's been writing songs for years, but now books. So I want to get caught up on the books. And you and I haven't had a chance to catch up in forever. You've been touring like crazy. I've been working on the new show. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you, Jamie. It's great to catch up with you in chat. It's been way too long, but yeah, doing well. Obviously, these are strange times that we're in, and but I never realized that quarantine would ever get so busy. To be honest. Especially at first. It was at first. It was really disorienting, actually, for me. Like you said, I spend a lot of my time on the road and playing guitar for Michael W. predominantly, and I love that, by the way. Brilliant man to work with, good friend. But so that immediately 2 months of those bookings went away, and then. There's just this unknown thing of like, well, we don't actually know whether this stuff's going to happen again this year.
No, it's crazy. I was talking to Greg the other day, and he said, people don't think about the layers involved here because you're having to plan months and months out. You got the fall, you got the spring, and the shows that are canceled, are those just bumped, are those postponed, or do they go away altogether? And then some people are saying, well, just do the show, but just, do social distancing. And what people don't understand is there's a certain number you have to hit just to break even.
That's right. Yeah.
Just doing a large arena that's half full is not necessarily going to pay for the crew and everything. There's so many details involved in this.
Yeah, I know. So, I guess we're all a little bit different, personality wise, but, my personality, I could get quite anxious about that, like the unknowing, the uncertainty, just not knowing when it's going to start up again. But what came alongside with that, like once we got into lockdown, I guess it's been like 7 or 8 weeks now. Here, and or at least have not been able to get out and work out of your house, but. I just started to see so much action on social media, like people were doing lives all of a sudden, all these different artists and creative types, and there'd be so much content out there. And I had this terrible feeling that I was being left behind and that I wasn't doing enough, and just this real kind of self-conscious thing. And it took a little while for me to settle into the fact that it's okay. I can actually be myself. It's not a competition. And that sometimes actually it's a good thing to take a step back and evaluate what is actually going on,
Yeah,
so,
I know. I relate to that. I had some of that feeling too, like, am I supposed to be contributing? Is there something else?
Yeah.
So then what has quarantine looked like for you? Kind of settling into that, going, no, it's okay to be me. It's okay to take a step back, for a guy who spends most of his life on the stage in the spotlight.
Yeah.
What's it been like then to just kind of settle into the walls of your home? And you said it's been busy, so clearly you're up to something.
Yeah. So, firstly, like I had to deal with this idea of everything just like coming at me like a hurricane in my brain, right? And so we have it's Karen's my wife, as you know, and we have our youngest daughter living with us right now. She's 25, and so, and this will make sense in a minute, but my brain was just so full of what's going to happen, and it's all I could think of. I was watching the BBC News as I do every day, you know, seeing what was happening in the rest of the world. And I was like, come on, Tennessee, we're not taking this seriously yet, you know. And so there's all that kind of, you know, anxiety going on too. And I saw one or two things, and there was people that are like way cleverer than me, and they were saying, you know, if you're the sort of person that lives in your head, it's really great to get it into your body. And so, and it just reminded me of other things, but there's a couple of ways of doing that. One is meditation, and the other one is exercise. And so my daughter and I, like, we made this agreement that we would do Jillian Michaels' 30-day shred as many days as we could, you know, and so we're still doing that pretty much every day.
I love it.
Yeah, I know, and it really helps. Like, it's really helped me to like feel good about something.
Yeah.
You know, for a start, you know, and that pain that you get in your muscles kind of definitely distracts you what's going on in your head. You know,
it reminds you that you're alive, right? Like, oh,
I know, that's right.
This is real. This is
So that was something that early on, you know, about a week or so in, that really helped. And then, you know, I've done one or two things with Michael W. You know, we've done some online worship services and stuff like that. And then also, you know, we actually moved house in December while I was on tour, which is, you know, not necessarily a good thing to do, but it's also meant that I can catch up with tidying up. This space that I'm in right now is actually a bedroom, but we've got a basement in our new home, and we're converting that into a studio. So that's had some difficulties with the coronavirus, but in terms of scheduling. But you know, I'm down there and painting and like doing what I can. And then there's one or two things that I do apart from playing with Michael. There's something called Tone Junkie TV that I make guitar presets for certain bits of gear. So I can do that. I can do that from home. So I've been getting busy with that. And then one thing that is new for me, it has been, you know, you mentioned writing a book and that thing that's been part of something called the Beatitudes Project. And so I've been finishing a podcast during the lockdown.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's going to be ready to go. But also, we can talk about this later, but we're turning the whole thing into an online e-course, simply because with all that's happened, it's impossible to schedule dates. And I was finding that for the Beatitudes Project, the best way of engaging with people was actually going to a church and doing an event, you know, and that's been the highest sort of point of engagement so far. And so we've needed to find a way of making that not so, you know, of being creative. And so, yeah, so I've been like really busy doing that.
Man.
And,
so
a lot of stuff.
You have filled up the time. I want to go back to the workout thing. Is interesting because of all the interviews I've been doing with folks, you're one of the few people that have really kind of focused in on that and how that impacted you. And you and I have had lots of conversations through the years on the temptation to kind of lose ourselves to other people's expectations. You know, you and I relate on some of that. And I had a conversation with my wife, Angie, recently where we were out walking, and I said, I realized that I have a tendency to lose touch with myself. And I said to her, I think it's like, well, I need to play basketball, or I need to, you know, and I'm 50. I'm like, you know, she's always like, you're going to go get injured. I'm like, no, but like, I think I need to bump into people or something. Like, I think there's something about the physicality of it all. And as we were talking, I was like, I just think I remember who I am better when I'm doing something physical.
Yeah.
And I just want to go back to that because it sounds like you were describing very much the same thing.
Yeah, very much. You kind of said something earlier about like feeling alive, you know, like I think it's good to remember that we are, you know, it's good to
we're not just energetic thoughts in our head.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know, I'm not I am definitely not the fittest person in the world, you know. Like I love to play golf, you know, and really the only way keeping fit playing golf is if you walk everywhere, but in America, you mostly go in a cart. So,
right.
I ran a marathon once years ago, but I'm over 52 now, and it's just, I don't know, like, if there's one thing that this quarantine has done for me, it's helped me reconnect with trying to stay fit.
And your body, and there's something about it. The ruminating, the anxiety, the fear, the like you said, it's funny, as simple as like my muscles are sore is keeping my mind off some of this stuff.
That is exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And I think that I'm not, I live my head a lot, but I don't suffer from anxiety per se. But I have noticed that if something is like has got my attention, that in my brain, like it is good to go and do some press ups or something, or run around the block or something like that. I've learned that over the years that it can dissipate, the potentially doing something else.
So good. So I've been asking folks, we are, like you use the word uncertainty. This is, there's so much uncertainty, right? And we're here in Nashville. They're starting to lift the ban, and some things are starting to open and so forth. But can you go back to a time in your story where you faced this, a high level of uncertainty, maybe similar to now, and how did you get through it? And how are you different? How did it change you? And basically, how are you different because of it?
Yeah. I don't even have to think about this, to be honest. The moment, just actually 10 years ago, I can't believe it. 10 years ago, my band from the UK, Delirious, finished. And that is the moment for me. Like, it was a 16-year career for me. But then more than that, like, apart from, my wife and my girls, like, my whole identity had become wrapped up in that. Like, my whole identity was being Stu G. It was interesting that, I was known as Stu G and not actually my name. It kind of changed my name, right? So it's like my whole identity was wrapped up in this thing. And that was really a hard, difficult time for me. It hit me in my 40s. It was a classic moment of like, is my best work behind me? Like, what am I going to do now? And as much as we all tried to be ready for it, I don't, and we did what we could to sort of finish well, like personally, and I thought I was doing that, but there was this whole big part of it that I wasn't even aware of, and honestly, that was to do with grief, and I think that what I'm recognizing in the times where I get anxious now, or the times where I get frustrated or panicked in what's happening with COVID-19 and the loss of income and all that, like, it's a very familiar feeling to me. It reminds me of that time of like losing a whole part of my life. And I think that what I've learned actually is that that it's the grief of change. Like when we see people panicking, and our immediate reaction to people just buying all the toilet rolls off the shelves is oh, that's really stupid. But actually, there's a deeper thing going on, and that is that actually panic is a part of the grieving process, and so is being angry, and in denial. Like, we see these people that are like, oh, it's just something made up by the media. And it's,
but these are all just the stages of grief.
Yes. Yeah. And I think so anyway. I'm not an expert, but I recognize it in my own journey that that there's always something beyond what's on the surface, right? And the only way to really get through, or to to move forward is to engage it, almost welcome it, right? Like, wow. but this idea to be present to what's going on, and that fact that yes, this really has changed life for like everyone on the planet. You know, so like, what does that mean for me? And you know, I'm reminded of like what confession does in some ways. You know, that and that's just being honest, and to be honest with yourself and say, actually, I am really panicked right now.
Yeah.
Like, what if we do run out of like stuff in our house?
Yeah.
You know, and to acknowledge it, like rather than sort of react in a way of just like going and being selfish with things. Like, how do we like be honest with these feelings and moments that we have, and see if we can like do the hard work of going through it rather than trying to get around it.
Wow, Stu, so insightful, because what you're saying really is remove the judgment, take away the shame. You're just reacting as anyone would react to loss.
Yeah.
And in when I'm coaching people, we're always talking about how the stages of grief never show up in the same order for every single person, right? So like you said, one person's got denial, the other person's got anger, the other person's got sadness. It's showing up differently for everybody.
Yes.
And what kind of compassion we might have for one another if we went, yeah, that's a little weird for me, but you're responding to this loss, change, just differently than me. It's not a right or wrong, it's just different. Yeah. And by the way, I might be there a month from now.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so I think that, you know, that awareness of other people, if we can actually show that to ourselves as well.
Wow, you know? Yes. Stu.
Because, yeah. And I think that, you know, in my work with the Beatitudes Project, the idea that we talk about is that the blessing is presence. You know, that when we are, you know, Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn, right? So if what we're going through is the grief of change, because you know, some people have lost loved ones to this disease, you know, to this virus, and others of us have lost jobs, right? And there's no kind of league table of grief. You know, it's kind of you know, one is not greater than the other. It's just like what you are suffering right now, and the blessing is not that thing gets fixed. You know, your loved one doesn't come back to life. You know, you might have lost your job forever, right? But the idea with this blessing being presence is that it's the presence of God is with you in that. Like the co-suffering Savior is on your side in that at those moments when we are suffering this great loss, you know.
That you're not alone.
And so
you're not alone.
You're not alone. That's exactly right. Yeah. Because it seems impossible. It seems a crazy thing to say that you're blessed when you mourn. But, you know, the idea is that if we don't grieve this thing, if we don't grieve the change that's come, or at least like be present to it, you know, our comfort won't come. But if we do, our comfort will come, you know. And so, and that comes to us, that this presence of God comes to us, you know, like in a mystical way, in a mysterious way, but it also comes through other people, you know. And, you know, so I can think back to when Delirious finished, and, you know, I was really lost for a little while in this kind of transitional upside down moment. And without really realizing it, I'd kind of, you know, got into a trance of sorts. And, you know, and being British, I used to like to have a little drink or two, you know. But what I've realized, you know, how did I get past some of this, is that I've learned not to, when I'm feeling that stuff, is not to have a beer or two, or, you know, anyway, because you end up doing stuff where you don't recognize yourself, you know.
You just medicate, right? You're not really feeling anything. You're just avoiding feeling, maybe.
Yes, and you avoid you avoid welcoming that beast that's kind of come to visit you, you know, by medicating, or and there's different ways to medicate, right? Like sometimes it is a chemical thing like alcohol or drugs or something. And sometimes it's relationships, and sometimes and it's really easy to fall into a situation where you're basically self-harming, where all of a sudden you need to scratch an itch, And so anyway, what I was saying about the alcohol thing for me is that I barely touch any drink now, not because of any other reason than it's good for my health, and second, it's good for my behavior.
Right. Yeah.
But but what I was going to say was about the presence of God coming with others. I remember in that time, and you were one of these people for me, who came along and helped me through it with your presence. I'll never forget that it was a non-judgmental presence. One of the things that you were talking to me about these conversations is how, God is a God of like restoration and a God of remaking things, right? And so, the big plan, God's plan is that at the end of the day, he is going to restore and remake all things, right? But
yes.
What I've learned is that the future, which is remade and is restored, and there's no tears, and there's no sickness and that kind of thing, like that future is coming to us all the time in the present, through little things, through small acts of kindness, through someone like yourself come to me with a non-judgmental attitude and say, come on, Stu, we can get through this. It's like that is the future reality coming to us in the present. So like God is breaking through
like time and space,
like the dimensions, the time and space all the time. When you think about like taking the cup and the bread, when you think about someone forgiving you something, when you think about a great conversation over dinner that you never want to finish, it's like God is coming to us in those moments all the time. And so this idea of the blessing being present is really tied up with like humanity and feeling fully alive in a moment,
Gosh, it's so beautifully spoken. When you went through that transition with Delirious into a world of unknown, not sure what you're going to do, identity tied in it. When God gave you the gift of presence through people, can you talk a little bit more about then how did you come out of it? Like, how were you different? Because like post Delirious, and after grieving the change, grieving the letting go of all of the stuff wrapped up in a 16-year career in that, when you look back, or maybe still in real time, how are you different? Like, what's different about you because of it?
One of the main things is awareness, is like self-awareness as well. So what I mean by awareness is like the awareness of your story and what's happened in the past. So like, I've been doing this a long time. Some people look at me and think think I'm something because of what I've done with guitar, and even in the worship world, right, in church. And so I get a lot of young people, young guys and girls that are musicians asking me advice, and a lot of that time it's how do we do what you do, or but sometimes it's like, I'm in this situation, what do I do? And the awareness of I've done many things and been in many situations like you have right now, and God's never let me down. Like even when things seem impossible, like, so I can tell you that if you stick to it and stay faithful, it's going to be all right. So that kind of awareness strikes me in the times when in the past I would have let the worry kind of like build like a snowball running down a hill, and now I can stop that in its tracks and say it's going to be okay. Like God is on my side right now, and he's with me in this ache and this lack and this longing, in this not yetness of things being fully restored and redeemed.
How do you do that? Is it like, is it kind of like, do you pause and get intentional? Is it a prayer? Is it being quiet, and you talk about meditation, like just kind of being quiet before God? Is there, do you go to the Bible? Is there like a spiritual practice you do? What in that moment when you're feeling that, what do you actually do?
Yeah. So oftentimes I let it go a bit further than I wish I did, because it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget, but if you can slow down, like that is the thing. If I can slow that, my Karen would laugh at me right now because I'm not the fastest person in the world at anything really. It's kind of, but my brain is running at 100 miles an hour a lot of the time, and I have to slow that down. And so when I was in that transition time, I had sort of 3 years or so of like pretty intense counseling and help and therapy, and one of the bits of advice someone gave me was that if the gas is in the room, open the window, don't strike a match. Like,
oh, yeah.
and so basically he offered himself to me as a window. So it's like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like this, Eugene Peterson, right? Who we all love. But
yes.
In the Beatitudes, he said, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. So if you feel it, if I know that if I feel at that thing where I'm losing control, or that I feel like there's too much change going on, I know that I can call him, and at any time, and that's my opening the window.
Yeah, God is this ever-present window for you.
Yeah,
open that window, let the kingdom air in. That's
right.
That's really good. Well, you and I both love to read. Eugene Peterson, how Christ Plays in 10,000 Places is probably one of my favorite books. Which, by the way, you told me about years ago. You told me about this book by this old rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel. I asked for one. Remember that? You telling me about that?
Yeah.
I started Instagram not too long ago. People kept asking me about books, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to call it. I guess I could I'll kind of just start putting my library on Instagram.
Right.
And, and I was like, well, what do I call this? And I went back to that line, where the opening line of that book where he had a heart attack, and a friend of his had asked him, so what was it like? Did you think about your life? And Heschel says, well, my prayer to God was, I didn't ask for success. I asked for wonder. And I've lived a life of wonder. And I love that, because it feels like so much of what you've been talking about in this interview is it's about curiosity rather than judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Stop with the judgment. Just slow down, get curious, have some awareness, pay attention to what you're feeling, and connect with God and be present to others. And you were the one who sent me, sent that book.
That's great.
That I'm just telling you, it impacted me in such a huge way.
Oh, that's really encouraging. Thank you. I love that. I've been inspired by a lot of Abraham Heschel, who is actually the teacher of a rabbi friend of mine who is he's in his 70s now. But when he was at seminary, he was a student of Heschel, and so he would talk a lot about this awareness, and how Heschel used to say you meet God in time, or you meet God in the moment, not in the physical space. So when Moses is at the burning bush, it's the time that he took to notice that it wasn't burning up, and that it's in that moment of awareness of God's presence that God says, take off your shoes, this is holy ground, and so I love there's a lot of this rabbinic thought that I'm really inspired by.
Oh, beautiful. All right, our time is coming to an end. Is there anything you're reading now that you would go, hey, this is a book I'm really enjoying? Or are you writing any other new books? I know we got the Beatitudes Project.
Yeah. So the Beatitudes Project is a little bit all-consuming for me still, even 4 years in from when we started to create it. Like I said, I've just been working on this e-course for it. So that's what I've been creating right now. Honestly, something that I've been reading this year has been, Nicky Gumbel, who started the Alpha course.
Oh,
he's a vicar from HTB in London, And he has a Bible in 1 year series that's on an app. And but I've been reading his commentary with that every day. And I'm not a voracious reader in terms of, like, I can't have 2 or 3 books going on at the same time. So I'm kind of committed to reading that every day, and that's been really, really good food for me.
Yeah, when I talk to those kind of on mission in other places of the world, the Alpha Course has kind of been an anchor for a lot of people.
Right.
You know, sharing the love story of God kind of to people who really haven't heard much about it before. So that sounds amazing. Yeah, that's super cool. So you got that that's on an app, did you say?
Yeah, it is. A Bible in 1 year app. Yeah.
Oh yeah, love that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's a great resource for people who are kind of looking for something. But if they want to connect with you, want to catch up on what's happening in the Beatitudes Project, or wanted to do the e-course, where would they go? How could they find out more about it?
Yes, real easy, like thebeatitudesproject.com. So that's the website. As the e-course becomes available, that's going to appear on there. And then my socials, really, my main ones are Instagram, where I'm at Stugio, Stugio. Now, people often think that that's something to do with studio and music. It isn't. So someone, one of my favorite golfers in the world is Sergio Garcia. And someone, we were on the first tee one day and someone started to call me Stugio. And that just stuck.
And it just stuck.
So it just stuck. Yeah. So
I love
Stugio. And then Stu G on Facebook was my page. They're my main places to connect.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Stu, so good to see you, brother, and be safe.